Welcome back to Yahoo Finance's All Market Summit Extra Road to Recovery. I'm Stabile Marcellus. Our next guest is a stand-up comedian turned media mogul. Byron Allen is the founder and CEO of the Allen Media Group, which owns nearly a dozen cable networks, including the Weather Channel, about a dozen local television stations, and produces more than 60 syndicated TV shows and thousands of hours of content. Byron, let's first talk about what it takes to pull off a multi-billion-dollar deal in the media industry. Your $8.5 billion all-cash bid for TV station owner Tegna was made public in March. Are you any closer to acquiring those 62 television stations?
We have, first of all, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate that. We have a great deal of interest in Big Four network affiliates. Big Four network affiliates, that's a terrific business. Last year in 2019, 92 of the top 100 television shows came off of Big Four network affiliates, ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox, because we have NFL football and college football and the Oscars and the Emmys, the Grammys, and just phenomenal content. This is also important in this pandemic world because we have local news, and local news is very important. And on the television stations that we own, some of them are doing 50, 60, 70 shares in terms of the audience watching our local news to get information on COVID-19. And we're more essential than ever today because of what's going on with this pandemic. So this is a phenomenal business. We are very much all in on Big Four network affiliates, and we would love to own Tegna and other Big Four network affiliate companies out there.
Well, you said that you plan to invest $10 billion over the next 3 years to acquire ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox television stations. But given the current media climate that we're in and the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on advertising, are local television stations still profitable?
Yes, they're very profitable, and we have very good margins. We did take a bit of a dip in the second quarter, as everybody, as we had shelter in place with local advertising, but it will come back. You have to have advertising just to let people know you're open for business. So we expect, and we're already seeing, positive signs in the third quarter, and we expect the fourth quarter to also continue to head up. We know long run, it's a marathon, not a sprint. We're going to be fine. Everybody's going to need local news, weather, and sports. That's just essential to who we are. And not only that, we have our Big Four network affiliates, but we also have a streaming service called Local Now. And Local Now is an app that's free, and it provides local news, weather, and sports, and it's on your mobile devices, so it's with you wherever you go. This is information that's just essential, and it's very much essential in a pandemic world.
Let's talk about access to venture capital, because that's notoriously difficult for Black Americans. Yet you managed to raise $300 million to acquire the Weather Channel 2 years ago. How'd you pull that off?
Great question. I made it a point to really get to know the capital markets and let the capital markets get to know me. And I went out and I spent quite a few years, the first 15 to 20 years of my business. I started my company from my dining room table in 93, so 27 years ago. And unfortunately, for the first 15 to 20 years, I did not have access to bank capital. I had to use factors, people who would take my receivables from Pepsi and Johnson & Johnson and McDonald's and Procter & Gamble, and I couldn't wait 120 days or 90 days to be paid. They would pay me weekly. But the factors were charging me as much as 26, 27%. And I knew I wasn't going to survive paying that kind of an interest rate. So I made it a point to get to know folks who had capital. And I met a gentleman who has a firm who manages a little over $100 billion. I called him up, and I knew managing $100 billion, it's not easy to deploy that amount of capital and get it back with a return. I let him know I had an opportunity to buy the Weather Channel at a very attractive price, and he gave me the commitment in one day. So he lent me $310 million out of his $100 billion fund. He gave me 5 years to pay it back. And I decided not to pay it back in 5 years. I decided to refinance and pay it back in 5 months. And in doing so, I had to pay a prepayment penalty, what's known as make-whole. I gave him close to a $30 million penalty for paying him so quickly. And that got out throughout Wall Street pretty quickly. And a number of bankers showed up at my door, and I knew they would. And I purposely did that as a way of saying that if you put capital with me, not only will you get it back, you'll get it back with a great return. And that's why I said, here's your 310 million back plus a nearly $30 million thank you 5 months later. And Wall Street rolled out the red carpet. And shortly after that, we were able to raise a little over $1 billion to buy more television stations. And now we have circled about 10 billion to buy even more media assets, not just TV stations.
That's definitely impressive. Let's talk about the coverage of protests following the death of George Floyd. In your opinion, does mainstream media have a blind spot when it comes to covering issues of race and racism?
Yeah, I do. I think there's a big blind spot. And I think that's because at the end of the day, 99.9% of the media is going through the lens of white owners and white managers. I wrote an op-ed called Black America Speaks, America Should Listen, What We Need to Do to Never Come Back Here Again. And I offered it to a number of newspapers to run it as an op-ed, and it was consistently rejected. And I knew that they would reject it. And that's why I went and bought 16 pages, because it was 2 pages to print it out, 16 pages in 8 different newspapers around the country. The Wall Street Journal, the New York Post, the Washington Post, I'm sorry, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and on and on. And I really wanted to talk to America in a way so that we can go to the next step and really take what we've learned from Martin Luther King, who taught us that there are two Americas. One America has access to education and opportunity and jobs and mentorship and capital that's not predatory, and the other America does not. And two Americas will not survive. Well, Dr. Martin Luther King shared these thoughts, these brilliant thoughts with us over half a century ago, and now we're watching it unfold. And what's happening is that we now have to become one America. We have to make sure that every American is positioned to succeed, that every American has access to an education that's free. Every American has access to health care, and you don't have to worry about health care because that's your God-given right. Every American has opportunity to success, whether it's jobs or business or capital to buy a business or start a business. We have to position each and every American to succeed to its fullest, because we have to compete as one nation, as one tribe, the American tribe, because we have a lot of emerging nations around the world who are doing a much better job of educating their citizens and getting their citizens engaged. So
And Byron,
that's why I wrote it.
This brings me to this. What is your take on President Trump's criticism of the media and the coverage of the protests following the death of George Floyd?
Well, listen, I think President Trump is completely wrong. The media is, President Trump, what he's not understanding is that he's nothing more than temporary hired help. He works for the American people. He answers to us. We don't answer to him. The media is there to keep the bosses informed, the American people. We are the boss. We run it. And so to criticize the media doesn't have an incentive not to tell the truth and to be 110% transparent. So he's wrong. And it's really you're in a bad place when someone's trying to control the narrative and tell you what you should what they want you to know. Thank God we have the media, or else I think we might all be drinking Lysol right now, and we don't need to be drinking Lysol.